Thanks for joining us on Coast to Coast Pest Talk.
Last week, we kind of went through my origin story, which was really fun. Walk us through your origin story at Primatech and get prepared for 7 to 25 extremely hard questions.
Oh my God.
Not quite that many.
That's quite a range. Do I get to pick? Can I pick the low? Is this an over and under situation?
No, just a few.
Yeah, for sure. We started, 15 years ago, like anybody else, with an origin story that sounded a lot like everybody else's. It was like, I did this, I did that, all the whatever the litany of things are that you list and say chronological order, what happened. But what I found was over the years is that people didn't always care about all the parts equally. So depending on who I was talking to, you would see a reaction of certain parts of the story from a certain group, a reaction from other parts of the story from another group. So we really developed sort of like a 3-version origin story, which is I think it's a little unusual. I haven't heard somebody talking about their origin story for the company in this way, but it's worked for us. So our first version is the one that we tend to use when we're networking. So if I'm at an event with other business owners, and I want to be seen as the guy, my main goal in networking is to have people trust me and be able to feel good about referring me to their other business associates and whatnot. We're mainly commercial pest management, so it's business to business a lot of times. So the origin story goes something like this. Somebody comes up, says, okay, tell me about where you came from. First thing I always tell them is, when I was in 3rd grade, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster. I swear to God, every single time I say that. And most of the time, you don't have to get further than that. You just go, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster. They go, we're good. I understand you. I got this.
They sign the contract
right there. Immediately, they're like, oh, that's perfect. Because you put that together, right? You're like, oh, yeah, Ghostbuster, of course. I went to school for fisheries and wildlife because I was so into fishing and hunting, the outdoors, the environment. I wanted to do something with that. I wanted to work for the DEC, which locally here, the DEC is Department of Environmental Conservation. That's the state agency that regulates pesticides and also does game warden, fisheries, that kind of thing. I wanted to work at a fish hatchery or something. When I was in school, I worked summers in pest control. I worked, out in the field doing bees and wasps and, running a route and that kind of thing. I found out through school that DEC jobs were really hard to get. And I, at the same time, started to realize, wow, I'm doing all the things I want to do here in the field in pest management. And pretty much it's the only job I've had. When I got done with school, I stayed right on full time with the company I was working with. And here we are 26 years later and still working in pest management. So that's pretty much the story in a nutshell. Now, it's important to understand why that works. So one of the things that's become a pet peeve of mine over the years has been the over and over again use of, you'll hear this. How'd you get into pest control? People will get asked this on podcasts and things all the time. How'd you get into pest control? Oh, I fell into it. We hear that constantly. The other one we hear all the time, no one says they wanted to be in pest control. That's like the first thing out of someone's mouth. And they say, how'd you start your company? How'd you go? Well, like anybody, nobody wants to be in pest control. Now, if I was, let's say, an accountant and I wanted you to be my customer. I wanted to do your books. And you said, well, Andy, how'd you get into accounting? Well, no one wants to be an accountant. I just kind of fell into it. And no, trust me with your taxes. We'll be fine. I guarantee the IRS is going to leave you alone. You would not hire that accountant. I really feel like the people that are the happiest found a place that fits most of the requirements of what their core wants to do. For me, I wanted to be a Ghostbuster right off. My story starts with, I ended up in pest management. I didn't have I just kind of, I don't know, I had nothing else to do, and here I am. So that's version 1. So for version 2, it's the version that I use with our internal staff and our potential candidate. You got to tell them something about your company. And this is the typical story that we tell. This story goes like this. I worked for a family-owned pest control company for 11 years, and I loved that job. When that company sold, I never would have left otherwise. But at that point, Holly and I said, this is our opportunity to make something for ourselves. And what we really wanted to do is we wanted to provide a place where we could take underestimated people and give them a job like I loved and a purpose to move forward and be able to have career advancement. And that was the whole founding of the company. Like from day one, we were literally day one making employee handbooks and training manuals like a nerd. I'm typing these things up, and Holly's saying, don't you have to make some sales calls? I'm like, yeah, but I got to have the employee handbook. And she goes, hun, there's just you. I think if you want to take a day off, you can figure it out. I'm like, no, we need vacation day policies. I mean, it was like from the start. This one is great because what it does in a very subtle way that you might not notice is that it converts the person I'm talking to from object in our story to subject. So now instead of a candidate that may come and do a task for us, they're now the subject of this story that existed before I knew them, that fulfills a promise that I made to every single employees I don't even know yet, that I'm going to provide them with a job, a career path, even people that are underestimated because they have a lot to give. And now they go, wow. Sometimes with some candidates, it's the first time that somebody's really had that kind of expectation of them. So origin story version 3 is for customers and prospects. This is one where you are in front of somebody that is either a current customer or wants to be your customer. A lot of times this is, we're walking around a facility and the maintenance guy who given us the tour of the facility for an inspection, an estimate or whatever says, oh, where'd your company come from? So I boiled this down to just a couple key points. I came from a family-owned company. I loved that job. That company sold to the largest pest control company in the world. And at that point, they said, nothing's going to change. I said, okay, let's see how this goes. 6 months later, everything had changed. I couldn't go on with that. And we never would have left. But my wife and I said, look, we can't keep on with this. I don't feel good about going home and telling my kids what we're working on. And so we left. We started this company because we really, really believed in the work we were doing, and we wanted to do that for people. And that's why we're here today. We sneak in there that there's structural differences between our large competitors and us as a mid-sized company. Those structural differences, those differentiators that have to do with scale and business model aren't things that they can readily change. It's not things we can readily change. It's who we are. There are instances when the big companies are the absolute best choice for a vendor, for an account. And I'll tell people, when we're not your best choice, they go with them, stay with that. But there's a lot of times where we're the best choice. And if it's a structural difference, you're not competing on how much are they charging you for stations or whatever. You're talking about a core difference. And that's all they really want to know is there a difference between you and the people we have now? And can I trust you? And is this going to go wrong? And that's that story. And it can be real quick. I've tried to do the long format story. You're with maintenance guy Joe, and you're walking through the basement of a commercial property, and he's like, "Oh, tell me about where'd your company come from," or whatever. And you start going on, and he is glass-eyed, and he is not hearing anything. He's just like, "Okay, let's look in the boiler room." He's done. He's done. So that's how we've modified that one. So that's our three versions. All of them are 100% true. There's nothing fabricated about them. And if you strung them all together, it would be this one big long story that no one but me is interested in hearing. Right. So that's why we've kind of segmented up the various aspects of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you, just to go back through and get some questions in here, on the version 1, that's the one for networking events. Is that the type of thing like a B2B networking kind of Is that sort of, or like
Absolutely.
a conference?
Absolutely. So if it's a yes, if it's a business to business networking situation, that's the one I always go with. And even in like within the industry, uh, when people ask, I'll lead off with I wanted to be a Ghostbuster, and it's like, boom, like people in pest control like you right off the bat. You're
Right.
totally good. And of course, if this gets really popular, people are going to hear this, and next thing you know, everyone's going to be stealing my thing.
We got to make some Ghostbuster t-shirts.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, we get so sued.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah, I don't know what the movie studio is, but we would. That
Please,
is definitely
please
trademark.
don't sue us, Ghostbusters.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, so you mentioned, you didn't just fall into this, and I've heard that a lot. Like, people that have reached out to me on LinkedIn, other pest controllers that are like currently in a company wanting to start their own thing. I like almost everyone I hear to some degree, oh, I just stumbled into this or that type of thing. For somebody like that, you have somebody that genuinely feels that way, and I've felt that way myself in certain aspects. What would you recommend in terms of creating an origin story for somebody that has that mindset? What are they missing? What do they need to fill in there?
yeah. Actually, I've thought about this a bunch, and I think anyone that is in the industry and enjoys it for a reason. Just trace that thread back to its origin. Think about your life and go, okay, even though it wasn't pest control, you did other things. And the other things that you did kind of led you here. And you felt like, oh my gosh, here I am. I found a home where I fit. Whatever that thread, pull on that thread and figure out where that starts from. And it may be a little bitty seed. It doesn't have to be like a giant thing where you're like, oh, I had a Bobby Corrigan bobblehead as a 5-year-old or something like that you like kept on your nightstand. But it can be a little thing where you're like, oh, I was always I loved biology, and whatever. I go out in the woods, and I turn over stumps and look at pill bugs and catch them, and I had an aquarium with whatever, a terrarium that I kept things in. There's got to be something there. So you got to mine your life for those sorts of things. Self-awareness is huge with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I found last week when we were talking, that yeah, it was you had asked something similar to that, like how did the beginning of your origin story tie to the end? And yeah, it's been really interesting to see like, oh, I really like in a lot of ways I was made like specifically to fit in this type of industry. I'm like just love like blue collar, just classic, like I'm not a high up executive. That's not me. Like these are like my people. You had mentioned that first you said you had a lot of structure from the get-go when you started this company. That's kind of who you are. But I'm curious how this origin story has changed over time. What was this what you told employee number one? Um, and if not, what's that look like?
You're giving me some of my own medicine now.
Just stealing it. That was the worst question.
That
So
was the word. Okay, so originally it was such an emotional transition to be wrenched out of the place where I was and
yeah.
then start out this. I wasn't kidding when I said I would have retired from that original company. So there is a long emotional transition period where your identity has to adjust to the new reality. It's a lot like the grieving process, where it takes time to reframe how you see yourself and the story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're going to do, because that defines what you're going to do next. That story moves into the future. So originally, my origin story was a mess. It was, I worked for this company and I loved it, and then this other company bought it and screwed it all up, and it was terrible, and they should have done this and they should have done that if they would have just listened to this and all these things. And so I'm going out and starting my own company, and we're gonna take all the customers and put them out of business. Like it was that kind of thing. And over time you reframe that, and you
Yeah.
kind of you have hindsight's 2020 for a reason, because you can work on that over time, and eventually it softens, and then you have more understanding. And I've had a lot of eureka moments or aha moments where I'll see something today, and I'll recognize, oh, that's why that happened, 15, 18 years ago. That's why the management at that company made these decisions. It wasn't because they were big jerks and whatever. It was because of these things. And now seeing the other side of the curtain, you're now behind Oz, behind the curtain. You go, oh, those are the buttons that needs to get pressed. It doesn't change some of the things where I go, okay, well, those were mistakes. Like, I would have done these things differently knowing what I know. But so that has modified and softened that story over time, so that I'll include some of it. It's definitely part of it. That breakup can't be extricated from the story. It's part of that path, but it's not like it was originally. I would have told anybody, oh my God, these people, just go.
Yeah. It kind of reminds, it's like when you're with your parents, you're growing up, you're with your parents and they have all these issues, and then you move out of the house and you grow up and you get married and you have kids and you realize, oh my goodness, they were right about everything, like not everything, but you start to see so many of these things, they were right on and they were rocking it, and you can adjust as needed. For number 3, or 3 and 2 rather, you've got the one for your employees, and the one for customers and prospects. Both of those, I noticed they've got a bunch of, I can't think of the perfect word for it, but sort of character related. You have things like, I wanted to retire from that company. They ended up not, working out. And so I'm going to go and I'm going to build this thing and I'm going to give what I love to other people. There's a lot of sort of transparency in those, that is not in the same way in that top one. Is that intentional? It seems like that one is missing that sort of, it has a lot of facts about, like you said, it's designed to make you the pest control guy.
Okay, so the fact that I would have retired from my original company, that aspect of it, is that what you're asking?
So okay, so you've got, when you're number 3, you've got, I loved that other company, I was proud of the work I was doing, the other company acquired it and I couldn't go on, that type of stuff. To me, what I hear is, I say, Andy's got character, he's got a heart, I don't see that in the same way in the version 1.
Yeah,
I assume that's probably intentional.
Yeah, I feel like for version 2, when we're talking to staff candidates, and version 3, I kind of include that in the thought that it's sort of a hero's quest arc in that, where you're pulled into this unwillingly, right? Like I didn't sit down and go, what we're going to do is learn how to do pest control at this old man's company. And then we're going to leave and say, sucks to be you, and start my own company because I know better. It was, right. You're being drafted into it, as opposed to like I didn't willingly put my hand up and be like, yeah, I'm not doing it for my own benefit because I chose to. I was forced into it. And it's the only thing I know to do, and so this is what I'm doing. You could probably include it in the first one. It depends if the people I'm networking with, if I know it's another small business owner, sometimes
they might hold that as a high value.
Ones, a lot of times in those networking events, you're really looking at maybe 20 seconds to a minute and a half to really kind of grab somebody, and then they're going to make a determination if they want to talk to you more. And sometimes I'll embellish as we go along, not embellish, but sometimes I'll add to it as we talk more if they want to know, or if they inquire. But I want to get across to them the very key important things that I want to get across to them while I can. And then at that point, it's like ping pong. I want to know about them too. Let them that's the thing people want to talk about most is themselves most of the time. So I want to give them that opportunity. But yeah, I feel like in version 2 and 3, I want it to sound like, yeah, we got forced into it. You're the Avengers that got thrust into this problem you have to solve.
Right.
And that's the quest we're on today. That's kind of where we're at with that. So what have you done in the interim from our first conversation about this? When you listen back to our conversation and then hear how we're doing our origin story, what has that done for you? In how have you worked on your origin story since our first conversation about that?
Yeah, I haven't put anything on paper, but that in and of itself is one of the things that I really want to work on is I just need to get more of my, in general in my company, more of my systems and processes just documented out on paper. And I'm feeling that more and more, especially as I hired that office manager, where there's just so much culture and training that I'm just not able to do it all in person. I really need a scalable piece of paper. So I'm planning on putting together something similar to, I'm going to just start with just one for now and
Yeah.
get that solid and then sort of expand it out. So I'll start with what it would be, probably your version 2, what I would use for my team, and then make sure the team's aware of that.
Sure.
And then kind of go from there.
Yeah. I think it's hugely valuable. It's a valuable investment to spend time on this. Like, you don't have to do it now. We're getting into the season, but in the off season, or I'll do it a lot of times. I'll be sitting on the couch and the kids are watching TV or whatever, and I'll have a little notepad and I'm writing down ideas, thoughts, and it may take literally a couple of years to kind of like hone that down till you have, yeah, these are the core elements. This is because they have to be authentic and have to ring true. Because
Yeah.
if you don't feel them to your core, at some point it's going to come back to bite you. You have to live and be what you're saying. But just, yeah, bite off little chunks. Write down things that happened, things you thought about, what you cared about at the time, and those will be all little breadcrumbs on a trail, that can sort of lead you back to where that real nugget of the origin is. One of the things I thought was funny with our last conversation about this is I asked you, I think 3 times, does your origin story lead backwards into your life? And all 3 times, it was funny because, and we might cut this, I don't know, we'll see. It was
Keep
funny.
it in.
It was funny because it reminded me of, not to get all, well, Easter was just last week, but it reminded me of Peter denying Jesus 3 times. Not, well, hold on. That's a horrible thing, because then that makes me. What does that make me? I guess I'm the
you the
Romans.
Messiah, brother.
No, I'm the Romans at that point, right? Because I'm like, do you know this guy? Yeah. Okay, so that's okay. I'm the Romans.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, but like that's what it made me think of, because I listened back, and because I was like, no, it does. It pulls back, and you're like, no, and I think for you, and it's not you, it's a lot of people. I think they insulate the core of themselves from their business. There's business and there's regular life. And the more you can dissolve that a little bit and be your authentic self, bring the things about your life that you think have nothing to do with business into your business life, the better you're going to do. I think you'll find like there's a wall that you've built.
Okay, so flesh that. Will you flesh that out more? I think you're totally right. What's that look like then? Where do you see those sort of the walls where there's division?
It's going to be specific to each person. Okay. So like I'll see with certain staff members, they'll have certain walls that they're erecting that are stumbling blocks for them. They'll put that up, and they're keeping back some part. And like other business owners and leaders that I'll talk to, they'll have this division where they'll think, like, for you were involved with music and doing an art, and you think, well, what does that have to do with my work in pest control? but it's part of your core and how your brain works and what drives you. And you break that wall down and then pull that in and be like, oh, I can do repetitive things exactly the same way over and over again. I can train my body and my mind to focus on specific things and identify patterns really fast. You're using all those same skills. And I think we tend to artificially compartmentalize ourselves into these little cellular things because it's easier for our brain to understand. And then we got to let those walls go and like let it all come together.
That's very interesting to me. I could totally see that. I think you're totally right.
Okay.
And I'm sure if I sat down, I could probably draw lines between the things that I grew up with and pest control, but they're not ones that I have drawn much or have readily,
Yeah.
connected.
Well, and that's the thing. Your perception of those lines being connected is going to be very, very dim until you start to connect them. It's just like a path that goes through a field. The more you walk on it, the wider it gets and the more you can notice it. When you have attributed meaning to those early events that were insignificant right now, they're teeny tiny. Your brain thinks of them as like, meh, they're throwaway things that happen, trivia. But if you wear a path to those of meaning, your brain now makes them humongous. And then all of a sudden you'll start to see like a spider web out to all these other things in your life that start to connect and they light up and your mind starts to put more emphasis on them, more meaning on them. And all of a sudden you're in a place where, oh no, it was inevitable. I was supposed to be here. I'm right where I'm supposed to be. And it's not that there's fate or there's not free will. I think there is. I don't know. But I assume that there's free will. But your mind will convince you that there's not. And that's a good, and in this case, that's a good thing. It's
right.
Your mind telling you you're in the right place. We can do this. We were meant to be here. This is exactly where we have to be. So I think it's just really mining those memories in a conscious way, not just in just a idle sort of way. So
yeah, okay, I'll give that a shot. That's great.
Don't send me the therapy bills when it goes wrong. Okay.
I will. No, you're the therapist, so
No.
I'll send you the bills already.
Yeah, great. I thought I was the Romans trying to kill you. The bad therapist right there. All right, Gabe, this was awesome. I love this.
Yeah,
topic.
absolutely.
I think we had a ton of awesome things. I'm pretty proud.
Yes, we did.
Pat us on the back.
I know. Not too bad. If you guys enjoyed this content, as always, subscribe to the channel. Leave us a comment with any topics you'd like us to discuss. Next week, we're going to be discussing what?
Fear. It's terrifying.
Fear.
Yeah. It's going to be awesome.
Great. Fear in business.
I'm scared already. All right.
The cheesiness is so good.
You
I
laugh
love
at
it.
my dad jokes. That's awesome. This is perfect. This is perfect.